Welcome to Inspirational Corner. I am your host, Speaker Couture. And today on the broadcast, we are celebrating Domestic Violence Month. October is Domestic Violence Awareness Month. And today on the broadcast, we will be looking at a special exhibit here in the Women's Historical Center. And the exhibit is called The Door. It was created by a woman by the name of Stephanie. In the moment of every waking day of every woman's life, someone is experiencing a domestic violence situation. These women live in fear. They live in utter terror and sheer darkness of every moment and of every second of their lives. Many are able to escape and many are not. Many live with the terror of failure, of fears, of not knowing where to go or what to do. Many are living in situations where they are beaten and abused and battered and hit with objects, coat hangers and brooms, and just mildly mistreated by the man that she loves. Well, you'd say, why won't she leave? That's an interesting question, and we'll get into some very deep questioning and answering with our expert, Dr. Pastor, who will be talking to us on these very things. Why won't women leave? Okay, now I invite you to view this art exhibit with your heart, with your mind, and with your soul. This is called The Door. The door represents the opportunity of escape. The door represents an opportunity to become a free survivor from domestic violence. The door represents the opportunity for the woman to make the decision to leave or to stay. Oftentimes she's perplexed between the two decisions. And so here we have the suitcase and we have the door. And the suitcase represents memories of hurts and pains, of good times and bad times, of happy moments, of sad moments. And then the suitcase also represents an opportunity to escape, to go from being a victim to a survivor. This is The Door. This is the exhibit that was created by Stacy Dubé here in the Lansing, Michigan area. And this is her contribution to the Domestic Violence Awareness Month here in the Lansing, Michigan area in the month of October at the Michigan Historical Center. Now this exhibit will only be here for another 24 hours, but I'm sure there will be other avenues and opportunities whereby I'll get to speak and talk more with the author and creator of this exhibit. I thank you for being a part of the program today. We are going to now talk with the expert on the subject of domestic violence by the name of Julian Pastor. Okay, Julian, tell us a little bit about yourself.
Well, I am the Community Relations Coordinator for EVE, End Violent Encounters. We are a domestic violence program in the Lansing area. We serve Ingham County and the surrounding communities. My background is in psychology. I have a Bachelor of Arts at Michigan State University. I also did a little bit of work as an intern with MSU Safe Place and worked as an AmeriCorps Vista in the Flathead Indian Reservation in Montana. So I've done a little bit of all the pieces of this work, from advocacy to community relations.
Excellent, excellent. Well, I want to get right into the interview. I'm going to ask Julian a few questions, and I hope to ask questions that are pertinent concerns to you, the viewer. And the first question is, Julian, why do women stay?
That is a really good question, and it's probably the number one question that we get with domestic violence, because it is a crime where it's a crime like no other. It's a crime where that person who is being victimized, the crime is being perpetrated by somebody that they know and somebody that they love. So it's a crime like no other in that Usually, if it's a stranger on the street, you might have some recourse. You might have some things that you can do to keep yourself safe. But with somebody that you know, it's a little bit harder to first recognize that what you're experiencing is abuse and then to leave. So there are many reasons why women stay in abusive relationships. And the number one reason is love. They love that person. They hope that that person can change. They want to be able to do all of those things right to make the relationship better. Because a lot of times the perpetrator is blaming them. And so they feel guilty for the abuse. They feel like if they somehow did something differently, that they wouldn't be abused. But my message that I take out everywhere I go is nobody ever deserves to be abused.
Absolutely.
Nor do we have the right to abuse anyone else.
Absolutely, which brings me to my next question. You spoke about guilt and condemnation. Why is it that when a woman is a victim of domestic violence, abuse of any kind, why do people stereotype the women? Why do they keep them why do they add bondage to their affliction? Can you tell me what that is? What causes that? Is it in the mind that you are what they say that you are? Or what makes people abuse you because you were abused?
That's a really good question as well. I think that with domestic violence, it's very easy for us to kind of think about how we would be in a situation where abuse is occurring. And we might think, the first time anybody even calls me a name, I'm out of there. The first time anybody lays a hand on me, I'm gone. But with domestic violence, a lot of times a history is created with that person. The victim has a relationship with that abusive partner. The abuse isn't happening all the time.
Right.
It isn't happening all the time. And so that partner is kind of making them feel guilty for the abuse that they've experienced. And then they internalize that. Then they feel like, well, if I would have just cleaned up, or if I would have just had dinner ready on time. And then, it kind of becomes one of those he said, she said type of cases. Now, domestic violence happens across the board, no matter what kind of relationship, but a lot of times what we see is a perpetrator who's a male and a victim who is a female. And so a lot of times, that person really feels like if they would have just, gotten everything done correctly, that they wouldn't have been abused. And that just isn't the case. It really isn't.
So you're saying that because the woman continues to try and stays and works and has that hope that, okay, it will change, she's really giving another signal. She's really accepting what's being done. And because she's accepting what's being done to her, others who know about it then stereotype her. And so then they treat her maybe as less or as unintelligent. And I guess so. It's not that you're unintelligent, but if you allow someone to conduct themselves like that with you, that's not real smart. As much as you may love that person, you're not helping that person to change.
But unfortunately, the thing that really makes it difficult is that love piece. Because they love that person and they want to please that person. And so sometimes they don't even recognize that what they're experiencing is abuse. Because abuse, strangely enough, can actually sound loving sometimes. It can sound nice. It's not just the physical abuse that we might see on TV or hear about in the news.
Right.
It's about that emotional abuse too. And so it could be something as simple as, I thought that we were going to hang out tonight. I didn't know that you wanted to go hang out with your friends. And then it becomes isolating. That person feels isolated from their family members and from their friends. And then us as outsiders might look at that relationship and we can very clearly see that what's going on is abuse, but that person can't see it. And so, it makes it very difficult. First, you have to recognize it. Then you have to be able to take some of those steps to hopefully be free of that relationship.
So do you call that a soul tie?
Soul tie?
Soul tie.
Oh, tell me about a soul tie.
Well, soul ties are connections with another person, usually through sexual commitments or marriage, long-term relationships. Your souls tie in together.
Yes.
you become intermingled, and it's just, you can't just break that bond,
Mm-hmm.
you know, because your lives are mixed together. You have assets, and you have commitments
Sure.
together in your family.
Mm-hmm.
So that's
Mm-hmm.
what I mean. You know, is it the soul ties that keep her in bondage?
I think that that's definitely a part of it, but really what it comes down to is power and control.
Power and control.
And it's really about one person having power in the relationship and using that to control somebody. So kind of what I hear you saying is a little bit more of kind of what we would call codependency, where both people are kind of involved in the relationship. They may be involved in a lot of different things, and then that keeps them together. But in this case, it's the power and control that really keeps that person in the relationship. And it may not necessarily be physical. It's usually about 1 in 10 individuals that come to us that maybe have a black eye or bruises, the physical injuries. A lot of the people that come to us actually are very emotionally abused. They've been put down. They've been called names. They've been told that they're not worth it. And for somebody that can really take a toll on your entire being.
Right.
And then you start to even internalize that and feel that way.
Right.
And if you've experienced abuse growing up,
Mm-hmm.
that may be all you know.
Right.
Abuse is a learned behavior. Nobody is born abusive or a monster. It's a cycle, and it's a learned behavior that hopefully we can break.
Well, you know, that brings me to the next question that I want to ask you about the cycle, about growing up in abusive families. Children, you have a mother, she's got children. You know, you don't want to rip the children away from dad, but we need children to have the rearing of their father, because we have so many children growing up without dad, and they're going ballistics out here in the streets, you know, and the girls are just going wild and getting into things. I've noticed in situations where the children take sides with the father, and then they take on that abusive nature towards mom, the disrespect towards mom.
Yes.
What kind of counsel and advice can you give to a mother who's in a situation where her children has seen nothing but abuse their whole life, and they don't respect her either?
Yeah.
What to do with that?
Well, you know, the one thing that is really important is that, you know, even though a child may only be sort of seeing the abuse happening or witnessing it, and even if that person might not think, you know, oh, we fight when the child's out of the home, they see it. They feel it. You know, tension is something that sometimes we can't see, but we can feel it. And so they know a lot of times that abuse is happening in the home.
Okay.
And we actually see this quite a bit when people come into our shelter, because usually when they come into the shelter, they feel a little bit safer. And so then they start to act out a little bit, the children. And, you know, it's because they feel safe. They feel like they're in an environment where they can kind of be themselves. But unfortunately, what happens is they do start to identify with that abusive behavior.
Right.
And we see one of the statistics that we hear is a child who grows up in a home with domestic violence is 7 to 10 times more likely to become either a victim or an abuser themselves. So if you are in a home like that, it is really important, if you did grow up in a home like that, to be able to recognize it and hopefully not continue those patterns in your relationships, because if it's not corrected, it usually just continues.
How do you counsel these women? I've heard that there have been women who lived in these situations for so long. Some of them are on medication now, tranquilizers even. I've seen and really have seen with my own eyes, one woman, she was totally transformed. She was literally totally healed. How do you bring someone totally back from emotional damage of that nature when they were on medication? How do you restore someone like that?
Well, you know, it's a process. It doesn't happen overnight. Sometimes, you know, when you come to shelter or seek out services, that's the first step. But what you use is actually an empowerment model. So when somebody comes to us, we don't tell them that you need to do this, this, and this in order to leave or to get out of the relationship. We talk with that person. We ask them how they feel in certain situations. We ask them if they are trying to leave the abusive relationship. We ask them, what are some things that you can do to stay safe? And so we kind of safety plan with them, but really what we're trying to do is empower them to begin making decisions for themselves. Because a lot of times, because of the power and control that's happened in their relationship, they don't feel worthy enough to make that decision. They don't feel powerful enough. So a lot of what we do is confidence building, letting people know that they are unique and powerful in themselves, and that they do have the strength within them to leave. They survive.
How long does it take to get that confidence back up? And we're talking maybe someone who's been through years and years of abuse.
Oh, yes.
How long does it take to get someone on your feet again?
I think sometimes it takes a lot of time. It may take an entire lifetime in order to get that confidence back. It just really depends on the situation and the person, and you know, how much they've experienced, for how long. But you know, it is a process, and a lot of the people that we see, they come to our support groups well after they've left the abusive relationships, just to continue to have that support from other women who've been through it, and to have the support of the counselors as well.
Well, do you have marriage counseling for people who maybe could save their marriage or want to save their marriage? People come to you for that. Can you help them to find someone that can save their marriage?
You know, actually we don't do a whole lot of that because of the nature of domestic violence. We really want to keep it focused on the power and control, so we only work with the victim. We actually do not work with the perpetrator at all.
So there's no healing for him?
Well, there is some healing. There is the prevention and treatment services, or PATS. That's what we actually use
for men.
For men, yep. So we get that question from women sometimes who come to us, and they say, you know, well, what about him? I want him to get some help. You know, I want him to be able to get some support.
Yes,
and so we give her the number of PATS, or try to give that information through a family member if she's no longer having you know, contact with him. But you know, sometimes survivors still have contact with the abusive partner. They may have children together. They may have you know, bills or things that they have to negotiate. And so we try to encourage that in a safe and peaceful manner. But there is help for the abusive partner, and I think that studies really show that it works the best if that abusive partner is willing to volunteer to go into a program like that, rather than to be court mandated to go. Because sometimes people are mandated to go by the courts, and they don't necessarily get everything out of it that they would have gotten if they would have volunteered. Because, you know, they sort of have to understand that they're participating in these dynamics of power and control, and sometimes it's hard to give up your power and your privilege.
Well, is that all that it is? I mean, it's a lot of angry men walking around out here, and there's got to be more help made available for them. You know, women are quiet at the drop of a hat.
Oh, yes.
But what can be done to get some help for the men, to get them to get around more men and say, look, you know, let's talk about this, and there's got to be some help out there for them. It's got to be, or else it's going to continue with another woman.
Yeah, and that's actually what we see, is we see where we can actually pull up a list of names of perpetrators or abusive partners, and we can see that they have multiple victims. That, and usually, you know, as a former girlfriend or a former wife, you don't usually, you know, tell the next one, you know, this is what's going on, this is what's happened. Now, some women do, and I think that's an awesome thing, but we don't tend to pass that information along, and so it's really up to that new girlfriend to sort of find out for herself. And, you know, and it isn't necessarily the job of that woman to do that, but we do know that it's a very small group of men that are abusive, and I think that that's an important message to bring to men, because unfortunately they're giving men a bad name. And really it is a very small group.
Well, you know, I wonder about women who make it free. They escape. They get to a place in life where they're making it on their own. They're making their own money. They got the kids under control, and then they go back. Why?
Yep, that's a good question. It's probably the number one question I get asked as, you know, doing this work, going out and talking to groups and things like that. You know, I have a sister, or I have my mom, or somebody in their family or their friends who has been in an abusive relationship, and she left,
Right.
but then she went back. Again, it comes back to the love, the hope.
The love and the hope.
Abusive partners are very good at saying, you know, oh, I changed, you know, things will be better, that'll never happen again. And usually with abuse, the thing that's really hard about it is that it usually gets worse. It doesn't get better.
Why?
Because I think it really comes down to that entitlement. A lot of times an abusive person feels entitled to abuse, and if that's not corrected within them, then you know, they feel like they can do that. And then society, our messages, our media, I think it's awesome that we're doing this here today because you know, domestic violence is one of those issues that doesn't really get talked about. It's kind of silenced. It's kind of a secret because it happens in the home. But we as community members do have a job to do. We can't look the other way. We do have to get involved in a safe way, you know, in a way that keeps us safe, because that abusive partner could very well switch gears and come after us. We do know that usually they target only one individual, and they may be very nice and popular and well known in the community. So, you know, it's not likely that will happen, but it could in an incident where there's a lot of emotions and high emotions going on. There are some other things that contribute to domestic violence, such as substance abuse, mental illness.
I was about to ask that. You know, is this a mental thing with men? Now, the reason why I want to ask that, not all men are mental, but could this be could this be another form of mental disturbance? Is that, am I?
Yep. Well, I think that we know that usually people who are abusive have a history of abuse, and so it's something that is learned over time.
It's learned. It's not a psyche.
It's really not. Now there are some situations where that they may have a mental illness, especially when we're talking about elder abuse, because we're getting more into doing some things with elder abuse and certain medications and certain you know, medical conditions can sort of cause that abusive behavior, but it's really important that we recognize that those things contribute to abuse. They don't cause it, because those could be used as excuses. Well, I was just drunk, I was just high, I just have this mental illness that's making me abuse. And it really goes back to the statement I made earlier: nobody ever deserves to be abused.
Right, no one deserves to live like that. That's not allowed. And if you are in a situation like that, I recommend that you contact your police department or contact Eve. Call her at MSU. I don't care where you are in the world looking at this program. Please pick up the phone, call her, and she can maybe connect you to centers in your area or get you to the hotline where you can get help. But please get out. Get help, because you are an enabler. If you remain in that situation, you are not helping the person to be free. You are helping the person to stay in bondage mentally and emotionally, and it's hurting you and your children. So you want to try to find ways to get out of there. Now, counseling for the kids. How to help them. We have about 4 minutes now. How to help them get respect for themselves and for mom. Do you counsel? Is there something that can counsel those kids?
Yes, absolutely. And we try to do counseling with mom and child together, or the abusive partner, because we do work with men too. Men are sometimes abused as well. Primarily we see women, but we do see men, and typically the men are the ones who have the children that we see. So we can do counseling with parent and child together. And that really kind of alleviates some of those issues that come up, especially because there's some guilt, there's some anger. If mom has left before, you know, why didn't you leave sooner? Why didn't you leave again? So we work through all those issues with the children, because they're bound to come up. And we take children all the way to the age of 17.
And okay, I was going to ask you about that, because there are women who maybe broke free from the abuse and became a survivor, but the children are whacked out now. And being a single parent is really hard. And she would need someone by her side, along the way. And I was just want to know, how much time can you give her? Can you give her 6 months? Can you give her a year? They just keep coming back to the shelter, and so they come once a year, once a month.
We can do individual counseling. They can set up the appointments for however often they need to see a counselor.
Oh, okay.
And all of our services are free and confidential, meaning we do not share any information with anybody unless you sign a release. So both of those things are very important for victims who are trying to leave.
Yes, it really is a terrifying experience. I took a look at this door, and I gave a little briefing on the exhibit there done by Stacy, and it was very interesting the way she combined all of the emotions and all of the pain and all of the happiness, and then you come to a place in your life, in your relationship, where you've got to make a decision that I'm going to walk through that door. I'm going to take that step, and it's a tough choice, because we're committed creatures. We're nurturers, and we're in it to win it. We're in there to stay for the long haul. And but you are the most important person in the world, and you have to take care of you first, or else you won't be of any value to yourself or to your significant other. You won't be able to help them or anyone else. You could be dead. So we don't want that. That's a little extreme, but it does happen. And so, Julian, you want to speak into the camera? Do you want to have something to say?
I just want to reiterate that leaving is a process. It takes time, and Eve can help you through every step of that process, whether it's getting a personal protection order or coming into shelter or even just using our non-residential advocacy program. It's a process, and we can help you through every step of the way.
Thank you, Ms. Julian, for coming. You can watch this on the broadcast locally or online. So please tell a friend, tell a neighbor that this is on, post it on your website, on your Twitters, but help us get the word out. Help save lives, help save family, and let's help save our men. They need help too. God bless you. Thank you for tuning into the broadcast today. Remember 1 Peter 5:7 from the Amplified Bible. God cares about you affectionately, and He cares about you watchfully.
Welcome to Inspirational Corner. I thank you for tuning in to the broadcast today, and I hope there was something said that will be a blessing to you and yours. At this time, I would like to remind you that we do need your financial support, and if you could send your offerings and gifts of love to P.O. Box 70143, Lansing, Michigan, and you can make that attention Inspirational Ministries. We need your help here. We're trying to give birth to new ideas, have guests on, and we need your financial support. So if you will, send your support, I would appreciate it. And if it's more convenient for you to give online, you can go to inspirationalcorneronline.com, and there you can donate your gifts and offerings on our secure website. And also, don't forget the 1,000 Women in Prayer every Saturday at 10 a.m. Eastern. On the website, you can obtain the phone number. Call us and join us in prayer every Saturday, and thank you.